Welcome back to Face in the Crowd. We are chatting with founder and owner of Cheri, yase. Now, Sunshine, looking back at your childhood, I mean, what was life like? What did you want to do?
Oh gosh, I grew up in a typical township home, in a neighborhood called Mfulo Village. It's a tiny little township in Soweto. Our house was my granny, my granddad, my aunts, my uncles, my mom. We lived in the garage. You know, as a child, everything's so big. I always imagined we lived in such a big property because I could run. But I had a very adventurous childhood. I grew up with 4 boys that my mom took in who are siblings, children. So we were always, you know, a lot of kids at home. I guess that's why I've always loved having people around me. I knew from a young age I wanted to get into the arts or kind of a creative space. I always really loved drawing, dancing, singing, acting, you know, so my mom harnessed and really entertained all of that. I did piano for like 5 minutes and I was over it. I did flute for 5 minutes and I was over it. You know, it's like I was tasting all these things to try and see what's for my palate. And when I got to high school, you know, you have to choose subjects now. And that's where it kind of became clearer for me. I went and I chose business economics, for example, home economics. Because I still wanted to make stuff. I knew that I always wanted to create. And my mom always encouraged it. So she'd take me to any free kind of open dancing call, or if there was an art school giving free training for kids to paint, I was there. Even when I stopped doing art in high school, you know, she'd make sure every Saturday she was taking me there. So having a great supportive mom, I was raised by women, like a house full of women. Very strong women, very opinionated women. My gran made sure every child in our family spoke Zulu, wrote Zulu proudly, I guess, to preserve our heritage, you know. So everyone at home had to get back from school, take off your, you know, private school uniform and get into your township life. And for her, she never wanted us to forget where we were from. Our family are from KZN, the other half, and the other half are from Limpopo. My dad's family is from a little town called Sanin. My dad was around when I was young. When my parents split, you know, the relationship broke up, but they were always, as parents, very encouraging of whatever I always wanted to do. When I finished matric, I wanted to become an interior designer. Okay. And Vit said, no, sorry, it's too late. Then I said, okay, I'm going to become an architect. And Vit said, no, you're too late. And I was stuck with AAA. And I studied advertising, a world that I knew of because my mom was in that media space. She worked for a newspaper called The New Nation and then moved to the public broadcaster. So she was always in media, and I kind of knew that space from her and got into advertising, really curious about how do people create ads, you know, who are the people thinking of this stuff, who writes the script, you know, when you're just curious about every part of it. And I got into advertising in AAA like that. I was the only black girl in art direction, which was my specialty. And that was interesting, you know, because I was finding my voice as a young person from the township. Didn't work for 6 months. I was unemployable because it was such a niche kind of specialty at that time. I graduated in 2013, still being only black female, with the only black male being Marcus Mashapalo at that time in our class. And, you know, he was able to get employed immediately. I sat at home for 6 months. Call center 1 minute, pick and pay 1 minute. You know, for me it was, I have to work. My mom's taken me through high school, university. We've always been all right. You know, I would never had to struggle in a sense of sleeping on an empty stomach. So it was my job to now start taking care of my mom. And I kind of started doing menial jobs, worked at Herbert Evans, which was an art shop in Rosebank. They gave me my first real job because I could get paint really cheap. You know, so I could still harness my passions in this creating, but I was also getting this education. And I've always had family that always believed I was very different, but they never discouraged me from embracing that differentness or finding, you know, my nicheness. Then they were really patient with this career because this industry we work in is so bipolar. You know, you could be the hottest presenter for the next 3 years, and then it's a different ball game. So I worked for the public broadcaster, and I worked in a department called Special Projects. So we produced, ran show, and you know, design Indaba, and all these really cool platforms that celebrated marketing and advertising. And then I went into media, and I worked for a magazine. And I knew once I graduated, I had to work in the companies that I really loved, you know, that whose kind of business cases I followed, because I needed to learn from them. So I made a list: Metro FM, SABC, SAB, MTN, and I think I had, at that time, Google was on my list, and we didn't have a Google in Africa. And I worked for all 4 companies. You know, I worked for 4 out of 5. I don't know how. Landed every job, but every position I had for me was incredible, because I always walked away from those positions having learned 3, 4 times what I knew when I walked in. So I loved that I had jobs that were always pushing me in areas where it wasn't advertising anymore. You know, I didn't go into advertising because I couldn't find work. So I went into marketing, and I went into brand marketing. So my career kind of started the other way around. So I used my marketing degree, and I went, okay, let's go in and do this marketing thing.
To date, what do you think has been your secret to success?
Geez, not being too hard on yourself when you fail. I think that I had to learn that really quickly, and my mentors again are people who are like, we fail all the time. You know, for every 1 success, there's like 20 losses, and you can't let that stop this vision or this dream that you have. I think, you know, because you're raised by strong Black women, you're taught don't fail. Failure is not an option. Or, you know, we push ourselves and give ourselves that much pressure that our mothers did this, so I can't fail here. I've had to come to learn that, you know, sometimes you fail, and where we win, we win. So, yeah, that's definitely the one piece I think I'd want people to walk away with. You're going to fall a few times before you get back up. Things are going to seem really bad. I mean, we've gone from not being able to pay salaries to steadily being able to pay salaries. We've moved, this is our 3rd office space, you know, because we were finding our groove and our home and our energy, and it's part of the journey.
In terms of those challenges that you faced, I mean, what are some of the barriers to entry you also faced as a company, you know, operating in the space that you are?
I think, you know, not having funding. Starting the business was just me, which was fine. You know, I could work from anywhere. There's a lot of hotspots. I can go sit at a coffee shop, but you know, you want to grow the business. So what that means is you have to employ more people. So while I'm chasing new clients, I can have someone in the office, you know. So I had to get Meredith. She was our first employee. And her job literally at that time was to answer the phone, answer emails, so I don't miss these new business opportunities coming in. You come to learn that that's part of this journey, you know. You speak to people and they tell you, we've failed, we've lost clients, we've lost R1 million contract, we've been, you know, we didn't win a certain project because we forgot to submit something, we've made silly mistakes. And you learn from those mistakes. If you're not learning from those mistakes or finding out how to do them better and to improve, you know, so I won't highlight one specific place. I think our lowest point was wanting to take a South African band to go and perform overseas over Africa Month, you know, to showcase the beauty of South Africa, our music, our culture. And, you know, we raised the money, we found the funds to run social media. We got people to buy into this vision of, imagine being able to take South African artists out every year so they can create careers and create more jobs. And a week about 8 days leading up to it, our visas were declined. We needed what they call the P1 visa, performance visa for the artists. And, you know, watching them be so disappointed in us, you know, me being so frustrated in the system, not being able to get assistance from government, from arts and culture, from platforms that I thought we can infiltrate this. Our story is so strong that broke us. And that happened in the first maybe 6 months of the business. And that that was the point where I was like, okay, let me not mess up any other people's lives and maybe stop this now. And I remember sitting and chatting to my mom, and she said to me, okay, so this is going to make you stop. Do you know, as a child, you fell off this thing, you were up and going, you were almost suspended at school because you had such a big mouth. You know, you were always kind of you push people to certain levels. So don't be afraid to fail. They believe in what you're doing anyway. And I'm so happy that Band and I, we're still good. We still work together.
So what can we expect from Cheri Yase, short-term and long-term?
Long-term, JSE listing, definitely. I think we want to be a proudly majority female employees business, you know, from security to the people at the desk to canteen. My vision is to have a, you know, predominantly female office that is Africa-wide, that is international. Short-term, I think you guys hopefully have seen some of our events. We run a really great event called Baraka. We realize that when you turn 30, people forget about you. We haven't forgotten. Because, you know, people, our friends and colleagues have become moms and priorities are different. So how do we give them, you know, still a good day out? So we created Baraka, which is absolutely amazing. You can find it on social media. We're working with Red Wings projects, supplying pads to schools and young girls across the country. We're partnering and aligning with collaborators on female book writers. There's a young lady, I've forgotten her name, and she's introduced kids' books in different vernacular languages. And what we do is we buy a bunch every month and we donate them to different communities. I really want South Africans to be proud of their heritage, their culture. My fear for South Africa or the youth of South Africa is 10 years, 20 years from now, and someone says, tell me your Indian heritage, your Indian culture, you know, where did you come from? What are you about? What is your community problems? And we don't know how to answer those questions because we're so caught up in succeeding and Instagram life.
And also as Western perception of success.
Exactly. And for me, being able to change my community is the little I can do. Being able to preserve and find opportunities to archive South African culture, from music to arts to whatever, is my biggest short-term mission right now. So the interesting meeting I had when you guys arrived was, you know, someone in that direction. Do you know, for example, why the Reed dance happens? You know, I don't know. I know about it. But we don't know how many Tsonga versions of the language are there. You know, Xhosa people, are there different types of Xhosas? I'm curious about stuff like that about my country because that, I believe, is what makes this country unique. We are like a multicolor of people and somehow we all understand each other. You go to other countries and, you know, they live in the same country but they speak languages they don't understand. This place, there's no place like home for me.
Sunshine, thank you for your time today and thank you for sharing your story. I'm sure it's touched many hearts and we wish you all the best with your future endeavors.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Cheers, guys. Cheers. The first step towards going somewhere is deciding you're not going to remain where you are. And Sunshine's first step has definitely turned her dreams into reality. That is all we have time for today. From myself, Liesl Wilson, and the rest of the Face in the Crowd team, it's goodbye for now.